Okay, it's working. Sorry. Sorry, Ed. I just saw this comment. It's weird how stuff gets buried in. I don't know how that happens. So, you say quick introduction, and you'd like to know about price setting, marketing, materials. You're not a native and live in a faraway countryside in Japan. Okay, and some parents ask you to give lessons to their children, and you're enjoying it, which is great. You want to turn it into a business, just don't know where to start. Okay, yeah, that's a great place to be. Absolutely. So, for price setting, what I did personally is I just looked around at the local market uh, and tried to set myself at a reasonable price. So I didn't want to go too expensive because if you do that, there's more incentive for students to leave if things get tight. You know, for example, while taking English lessons, if a child wants to do swimming lessons and maybe soccer practice or something, the parents are going to look at the budget and say, well, let's see, you know, he's been going to English for a couple of years and we're paying this much a month. I don't know if it's worth it anymore. But if it's a more reasonable price, you can expect them to stay around longer. But there's definitely a sweet spot. You don't want to go too cheap because then it's very difficult to make a living. Although you might be busier, there is such thing as being too busy, where you're just teaching all day long and you're not making that much for it. So my advice would be just get on the internet and check out what schools in your local area are charging and kind of try to find a middle ground. Unfortunately, it's pretty common that if a school has a native speaker, they're going to charge a little more. And that's just because supply and demand. You know, if someone is willing to come over here from an English-speaking country and live in Japan, they have to have some way of kind of making it worth it for them, and so they usually pay them a bit more, and then in return, you know, they have to have more appeal for the market. It's a premium product, so to speak, so they can charge more, basically. So you may actually have an advantage there in being able to charge a little bit less. And then you also it's really important to put yourself in a situation where it's sustainable. You know, you don't want to have too many expenses in the beginning. Preferably, you don't want to have any. The only reason I started a school at a separate location is because it's a good location, really good location actually, and teaching from my house would have been really unrealistic. I live on the 10th floor of this mansion and there's no parking and it's kind of hard to get to, so it would have been, you know, not worth it. So that's something to think about. As far as marketing, I mean, in the beginning, it might be helpful to do something local. A lot of local magazines and even television stations will give you free publicity if you officially open a new business. But after a little while, the returns on that diminish. And, you know, to be honest, very, very, very few students I have come through any kind of marketing campaign. So in the past 3 years, I've done, I think, two, maybe three magazine ads, and I got a total of 2 students from them. And the problem was they lived really far away, relatively speaking. So that's another issue. You can spend a lot on advertising, and you might break even, you might not. So I'd be really careful about that. A lot of people think, you know, the more you spend on marketing, the more students you're going to get. Marketers would love to tell you that because that's how they make their money. Going back, I might actually do something more like with Facebook or Google, since people are increasingly more online in Japan. As far as materials, I use, for kids, I use the Let's Go series, which is really simple, basic English. Very popular in Japan. A lot of schools use it. And I also make a lot of my own teaching materials just on my computer. It's generally easier. There are also a lot of websites, just off the top of my head here. There's teachthis.com, and let me just, if you type in kids games ESL, ESL Kids Stuff is a pretty good one. ESL Games Plus. There's another one called ISL something something. Let me find that. They have thousands of worksheets. Yeah, en.islcollective.com. So my point is there's lots and lots of resources out there. It's definitely advisable to have a core textbook for the lesson, and it's worth getting the flashcards and then the CDs, the official version for the books, just because that kind of anchors the class. But I mean, it sounds like you're enjoying it, which is the most important part, because kids can feel that, and if you're making it fun for them and you're enjoying it, the creativity will flow, so to speak, and you'll get more students that way. For me, it was after like the initial 6 months or so, and this is true with most businesses, it's all word of mouth, kuchikomi. If the kids are happy with English classes, the parents can see that, and then the parents know other parents, and it comes up in conversation, and they'll recommend you, and so on and so forth. There's a kind of a snowball effect, but it depends where you are in terms of how many students you'll get. But if you are in the countryside and, you're able to teach from your house, that's a huge plus. The lower you can keep your expenses, the better. And also, I would be careful about going too cheap. This is something a lot of people in the area have told me. So really set your prices I would recommend in the average, based on your local area. You don't want to go too expensive, because then you're pressured to over-deliver and you can get some very difficult customers. And you don't want to go too cheap, because like I said, it's hard to make enough money, and also you get some difficult customers. Right in the middle is where you want to be. You just keep everything reasonable. And personally, I don't charge the Nyukaikin. There's no Kyozai-hi, none of that. It's just the monthly lesson fee, and then when students buy their first book or upgrade to a new one, I just charge them the price of the book. There's no extra fees and stuff like that. I really don't believe in that. Maybe a Kyozai-hi, if you're printing out a lot of stuff and going through a lot of ink and spending a lot of time making materials. But be really careful about that. It's just kind of a weird thing to do, to charge people money for nothing. A lot of people these days, they do want their kids to learn English, but there's some hesitancy in regard to financing it and what they're going to get back. The English teaching industry still seems to have this kind of, I don't know, what's the word, aura around it of kind of being, luxurious and things. And really, if you want to do a good job for the kids, best approach is just to keep everything reasonable, low expenses, and design it so that it's easy for the kids to continue coming, and it's easy for the parents to continue paying if they feel they're getting enough value and their kids are enjoying the lessons. That's the success of any business, really, is keeping your customers happy and your products reasonably priced. So I hope that's helpful, and if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. I'll reply to your comment here to let you know if this video is posted. So thanks again, and sorry for not seeing this earlier. It's really strange. Oh, I was probably signed into a different YouTube account. That's what it is. Anyways, I hope that's helpful. Bye-bye.